My son left me $29. His wife showed up after 1 hour to take it. She messed with the wrong mother. My name is Margaret Hayes, and the call that destroyed my world came at exactly 11:47 a.m. on June 3, 2024. I was in my garden in Oak Park, tending to the roses Marcus had planted for me 3 summers ago, when my phone rang. The number on the screen was Haven Tech Solutions, my son's company. My heart lurched. Marcus never called from the office number. Mrs. Hayes? The voice was young, female, trembling. This is Jessica from Haven Tech. There's been an emergency. Marcus collapsed during a meeting. They're taking him to Chicago Memorial Hospital right now. The pruning shears fell from my hands. What do you mean collapsed? I don't know, Mrs. Hayes. The ambulance just left. You need to get to the hospital. The 20-minute drive to Chicago Memorial took an eternity. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, and my mind raced through impossible scenarios. Marcus was 41 years old, healthy. He ran marathons. He didn't drink or smoke. This had to be a mistake. Maybe he fainted. Maybe it was stress. Maybe low blood sugar. Anything but what the terrible voice in my head kept whispering. Memories flooded back unbidden as I sped down Lake Street. Marcus, at 3 years old, crying in my arms the night his father walked out on us without so much as a goodbye. "Where's Daddy?" he'd asked, and I'd had no answer that would make sense to a child. So I'd held him and promised, "I'll never leave you, baby. Never." I'd kept that promise through everything. Through working as a night janitor at an office building downtown, coming home at dawn to get Marcus ready for preschool, then heading to my waitressing shift at the diner. Through the weekend retail job that paid for his school supplies and Christmas presents. Through the years when we ate pasta 3 nights a week because that's all I could afford, but Marcus never complained. He'd just smile at me across our tiny kitchen table and say, "This is the best dinner ever, Mom." Through his teenage years when other kids had money for movies and video games, and Marcus wore secondhand clothes but never once made me feel guilty about it. Instead, he studied harder, determined to earn a scholarship, and he did full ride to the University of Illinois. I remembered his college graduation in 2005, watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown, and the way he'd found me in the crowd afterward, picked me up and spun me around. "We did it, Mom! We actually did it!" "You did it, baby," I'd corrected him, tears streaming down my face. "No," he'd said firmly, his hands on my shoulders, looking me straight in the eye. "We did this together. Everything I am is because you never gave up on me." The hospital parking garage blurred past as I finally found a spot. I ran through the automatic doors, my 66-year-old legs moving faster than they had in years. "Marcus Hayes!" I gasped at the emergency desk. "My son! He was brought in by ambulance." The receptionist's face shifted into that careful, practiced sympathy that made my stomach drop. "Let me get a doctor for you, Mrs. Hayes. Please, have a seat." "I'm not sitting down. Where is my son?" "Mrs. Hayes?" A woman in a white coat approached, her expression grave. "I'm Dr. Jennifer Morrison. I've been attending to your son. Please come with me." She led me to a small consultation room, and I knew before she even opened her mouth. "Marcus suffered a massive heart attack," Dr. Morrison said softly. By the time the paramedics arrived, he'd been without oxygen for several minutes. "We've done everything we can, but there's minimal brain activity. He's on life support, but Mrs. Hayes, the damage is catastrophic." "No." The word came out as barely a whisper. "No, that's impossible. Marcus doesn't have heart problems. There's no family history. His father..." I stopped. His father had abandoned us, but he'd been healthy. My parents lived into their 80s. This doesn't make sense. "Sometimes these things happen without warning," Dr. Morrison said, her hand gentle on my arm. "I'm so very sorry. Would you like to see him?" They took me to him. Marcus lay in the ICU bed, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped and hummed, keeping his body technically alive. But when I took his hand, his strong, capable hand that had helped me plant those roses, that had signed the deed to the house he'd bought me when he insisted I retire at 60, it was already cool to the touch. "Oh, baby," I whispered, sinking into the chair beside his bed. What happened to you? The next 2 hours existed outside of time. I sat holding Marcus's hand, talking to him even though I knew he couldn't hear me. I told him about the roses blooming in the garden. I reminded him about our Sunday dinner tradition, how just 5 days ago we'd sat in my dining room eating pot roast, and he told me about some new contract Haven Tech had landed. I remembered his first business success, Haven Tech Solutions, the cybersecurity software company he'd built from absolutely nothing. In 2013, he'd come to me with a business plan and a dream. "Mom, I need $50,000 to get this started," he'd said, nervous but excited. "I know it's a huge amount, but I've got investors interested if I can show initial funding. Would you co-sign a loan with me?" I'd looked at my 29-year-old son, saw the same determination in his eyes that had gotten him through college, and said yes without hesitation. We'd both signed those loan papers, betting everything on his vision. By 2016, Haven Tech had its first major client. By 2020, Marcus had paid off that loan and bought me a house, a real house with a garden and a porch, not the tiny apartment we'd shared for so many years. "You're retiring, Mom," he'd announced. "No arguments. You've worked your whole life. Now it's time to rest." By 2024, Haven Tech Solutions was valued at $45 million. And Marcus never forgot where he came from. Every Sunday, without fail, he came for dinner. Every birthday, every holiday, every ordinary Tuesday when he just wanted to see his mom. He'd hug me and say, "Everything good in my life started with you, Mom." "Mr. Hayes's vitals are declining," a nurse said quietly, checking the monitors. Dr. Morrison returned, her face somber. "Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask you about his wishes regarding life support." The words felt like knives. "He's only 41. "I know. I'm so sorry. But the brain damage is irreversible. The machines are the only thing keeping his heart beating. We can maintain life support, but he'll never wake up. Never breathe on his own. Never be Marcus again." I looked at my son's peaceful face. He'd hate this being kept alive artificially. No hope of recovery. Marcus had always been about living fully, not just existing. "Turn it off," I whispered, then louder, "Turn it off. Let him go." At 2:47 p.m., they removed the ventilator. I held Marcus's hand and told him I loved him, told him how proud I was, told him it was okay to rest now. The machines flatlined with a long, devastating tone, and then there was silence. The crushing, absolute silence of a world without my son. A nurse, Maria Rodriguez, her name tag read, put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Take all the time you need, Mrs. Hayes." But what time could ever be enough? How do you say goodbye to the person who was your entire reason for living? I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Hours. Time had lost all meaning. I was dimly aware of nurses coming and going, of Maria checking on me, of someone bringing me water I couldn't drink. Marcus's phone, in the clear plastic bag with his other belongings, kept buzzing. Message after message lighting up the screen. Probably employees, friends, people who'd heard the news. I couldn't bring myself to look. At 3:45 p.m., I heard footsteps in the corridor. Not the soft-soled shoes of nurses, but the sharp, deliberate click of high heels. The sound grew louder, stopping just outside Marcus's room. "Margaret?" A woman's voice, accented French, spoke from the doorway. "We need to talk, right now." I turned, confused and grief-stricken, to see a woman I knew but wished I didn't. Vanessa, Marcus's wife. Vanessa Laurent Hayes stood in the doorway of my dead son's hospital room at exactly 3:52 p.m., 1 hour and 5 minutes after Marcus's heart stopped beating. She was 34 years old and stunning in that calculated, high-maintenance way that had always made me uneasy. Today she wore a designer black dress Chanel. Maybe. I didn't know these things, with pearls at her throat and her dark hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. Her makeup was perfect. Mascara that hadn't run, lipstick that hadn't smudged. For a woman whose husband had just died, she looked remarkably composed. But it was her eyes that made my skin crawl. Behind the theatrical shimmer of tears, they were cold, calculating. The eyes of someone doing math, not mourning. She wasn't alone. A man in an expensive charcoal suit stood beside her, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my first car. Everything about him screamed attorney. Margaret, Vanessa said again, her French accent wrapping around my name. She dabbed at her eyes with a white handkerchief. I'm so devastated. Marcus was. He was everything. Her voice broke convincingly. I couldn't speak. My son's body was still warm in the bed beside me. This is Gerald Thornton, Vanessa continued, gesturing to the man beside her. My attorney. I know this is difficult, but we need to discuss Marcus's affairs immediately. The words didn't make sense. What? Gerald Thornton stepped forward, his expression professionally sympathetic but businesslike. Mrs. Hayes, I understand this is a terrible time, but there are urgent matters that require attention. As Marcus's surviving spouse, Mrs. Laurent Hayes has certain legal rights that need to be established immediately. Marcus just died, I said, my voice hollow. An hour ago. Which is precisely why we need to act quickly, Vanessa said, her accent thickening. There are business decisions to make, assets to secure, accounts to freeze. Haven Tech cannot be left in limbo. I stared at her, my grief-numbed brain struggling to process what was happening. You want to talk about business? Now? Margaret, I understand you're emotional, Vanessa began. Emotional? Something hot and sharp cut through the fog of grief. My son is dead. Gerald opened his briefcase, pulling out a folder thick with documents. Mrs. Hayes, let me be direct. Under Illinois law, as the legal surviving spouse, Mrs. Laurent Hayes is entitled to the entirety of Marcus's estate, his company, his properties, his investments, and liquid assets, everything totaling approximately $29 million. The number hung in the air like an obscenity. I'll need you to sign these documents, Vanessa said, holding out papers that were clearly pre-printed, pre-prepared. They acknowledge my rights as Marcus's widow and facilitate the immediate transfer of estate control. It's just a formality, but it needs to be done today. I looked at the papers, then at Vanessa's perfectly made-up face, then at Gerald's expensive suit. The timing crashed over me like ice water. You had these ready, I said slowly. Before he died. You came here with an attorney and documents already prepared. Vanessa's mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. Her eyes flashed with something cold and hard before the tears returned. I called Gerald on the way to the hospital. I wanted to be prepared to handle Marcus's business affairs because I knew he'd want... Get out! The words came out quiet but sharp. I'm sorry, Vanessa blinked. Get out! I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. My son died an hour ago and you're standing here with a lawyer and paperwork talking about money? What kind of monster are you? Mrs. Hayes, please calm down, Gerald said, raising his hands. We're simply trying to... Get out of this room right now or I'll call security. The door burst open and 2 security guards appeared, drawn by my shouting. Nurse Maria was right behind them. Is everything all right here? One of the guards asked, his hand on his radio. Vanessa straightened, her composure returning like a mask sliding back into place. She tucked the documents back into the folder with deliberate calm. It's fine. Mrs. Hayes is understandably upset. We'll speak another time. She turned to leave, but paused at the door, looking back at me with those cold, cold eyes. Margaret, I'm the kind of woman who knows her legal rights. Marcus was my husband. Whether you like it or not, his fortune is mine now. Her voice dropped lower. We can do this nicely, or I can make this very ugly for you. Gerald nodded at me, his expression a mix of apology and warning. Mrs. Hayes, you should consult with an attorney. Illinois inheritance law is very clear on spousal rights. Mrs. Laurent Hayes is entitled to claim the entire marital estate. Then they were gone, heels clicking back down the corridor. I collapsed back into my chair, my entire body shaking. Maria was beside me in an instant, pressing a cup of water into my trembling hands. Drink this, honey, she said softly. You're in shock. I couldn't hold the cup. Water sloshed over my hands. Maria steadied them, helping me take small sips. That woman, Maria said, her voice careful but concerned. She seemed too prepared, like she knew this was coming. The words planted seeds in my grief-addled mind. Seeds of suspicion I was too devastated to fully understand yet. I don't understand, I whispered, looking at Marcus's peaceful face. He was so healthy. Heart attacks don't just happen to 41-year-old marathon runners with no family history. My mind drifted back to October 2023, 8 months ago. Marcus had called me, excited and nervous. "Mom, I want you to meet someone. Her name is Vanessa. She's amazing, Mom. I think she might be the one." They'd been dating for 6 months, a whirlwind romance that had started at some tech conference in March. Vanessa was supposedly a freelance consultant in luxury brand marketing, French by birth, cultured and sophisticated. Marcus was smitten. I'd met her at Sunday dinner. She'd been charming, complimenting my cooking, asking about Marcus's childhood, laughing at all the right moments. But something had felt off. The way her eyes had lingered on the framed photos of Marcus's awards, the questions about his business that seemed just a little too detailed for a casual girlfriend. The way she touched him, possessive, controlling. "She seems nice," I'd said carefully when Marcus walked me to my car that night. "But?" Marcus had prompted, knowing me too well. "Nothing. If she makes you happy, baby, that's what matters." But there had been something I couldn't name, couldn't articulate, just a mother's instinct that said wrong, wrong, wrong. 2 weeks later, Marcus called again. "Mom, Vanessa and I are getting married. Next month." "Next month?" "Marcus, that's so fast. Are you sure?" "Mom, when you know, you know. Vanessa makes me happy. She understands me. She's brilliant and ambitious, and she gets my world in a way no one else has." The wedding had been small. City Hall. Immediate family only. Vanessa had insisted she wanted something intimate and meaningful, not a big production. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now, I wondered if she just wanted it over with quickly. I'd kept my reservations to myself. Marcus was happy. He was a grown man, and I didn't want to be the overbearing mother who couldn't let go. Now he was dead. My phone buzzed in my purse. I fumbled for it with shaking hands. My sister Helen. "Helen," I choked out when I answered. "Marcus is gone." "What? Maggie, what happened?" Through sobs, I told her. The call, the hospital, the heart attack, the life support. And then, Vanessa and her lawyer showing up barely an hour after his death. "I'm on my way," Helen said immediately. "Don't sign anything. Don't talk to that woman. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Helen lived in Naperville, usually a 40-minute drive. She made it in 18. When she burst into the hospital room, she took one look at me, still sitting beside Marcus's bed, still holding his cooling hand, and wrapped me in her arms. "Oh, Maggie," she whispered. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry." We cried together, my big sister holding me the way she had when we were children and I'd scraped my knee or had a nightmare. Finally, when the tears subsided enough for me to speak, I told her everything Vanessa had said. Helen's face darkened with fury. "That bitch showed up with a lawyer an hour after Marcus died?" "With documents already prepared," I added. "Helen," she knew. "She knew before she even got here." Helen looked at me sharply. "What are you saying?" "I don't know." I looked at Marcus's face, so peaceful now, so still. "But something is very wrong. You don't bring your lawyer to your husband's deathbed with inheritance paperwork ready unless—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't voice the terrible thought taking shape in my mind. Helen gripped my shoulders. "Maggie, you need a lawyer. That woman is dangerous. I don't know what's going on, but whatever it is, you need protection." I turned back to Marcus, touching his cheek one last time. "What did you get yourself into, my baby?" I whispered. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Vanessa's voice in my memory. "I'm the kind of woman who knows her legal rights. We can do this nicely, or I can make this very ugly for you." A chill ran down my spine. Vanessa had no idea what kind of woman I was. I'd fought my entire life for Marcus. I'd worked 3 jobs, sacrificed everything, never given up, even when it seemed impossible. And I wasn't about to start giving up now. The morning of June 4th, I woke to Helen shaking my shoulder in the guest room of her Naperville home. "Maggie, you need to see this." She handed me her phone, opened to the Chicago Tribune's website. The headline made my blood run cold. Tech CEO Marcus Hayes dies at 41, widow plans memorial service. The article featured a photo of Vanessa, looking elegant and grief-stricken, standing in front of St. Catherine's Cathedral downtown. A quote jumped out at me. "My husband would have wanted a celebration of his life befitting his accomplishments. I'm organizing a service that honors everything Marcus built." "She didn't even call me," I whispered. "She's planning my son's funeral without asking me." I tried calling Vanessa. No answer. I called the funeral home listed in the article, Henderson and Sons, the most expensive in Chicago. When I gave my name, the director's voice became carefully professional. "Mrs. Hayes, Mrs. Laurent Hayes has already made all the arrangements. The service is scheduled for June 6th at St. Catherine's Cathedral." "I'm his mother. I should be making these decisions." "I understand, ma'am, but Mrs. Laurent Hayes is the legal spouse and has provided all necessary documentation. She's been quite thorough." Thorough, that word again. "Like the pre-prepared documents at the hospital." "St. Catherine's?" I said, my voice rising. Marcus hated elaborate ceremonies. He wanted something simple. Oak Park Community Church, where we used to— "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes. Everything is already arranged and paid for. If you have concerns, you'll need to discuss them with Mrs. Laurent Hayes directly." She'd locked me out of my own son's funeral. Helen saw my face. "What did she do?" "She's taken over everything. Downtown Cathedral, big production, everything Marcus would have hated. Helen, I can't even bury my son the way he wanted." "That woman," Helen said through clenched teeth, "is a piece of work." I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening. So I called the one person who knew Marcus better than anyone except me, David Park. David had been Marcus's best friend since 5th grade. They'd built Haven Tech together, Marcus handling the business side, David overseeing technology. When Marcus called David his brother, it wasn't just a figure of speech. "Mrs. Hayes," David answered on the first ring, his voice thick with grief. "I'm so sorry. I can't believe he's gone." "David, I need to talk to you. Not on the phone. Can you meet me?" We met at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park an hour later. David looked like he hadn't slept, his eyes red-rimmed behind his glasses. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "David, I need you to tell me something. Was Marcus okay? These last few weeks?" David's expression shifted, became troubled. He stirred his coffee for a long moment before answering. "He was distracted," David said finally. "Worried. The last month or so he wasn't himself. Distant in meetings, forgetting things, losing weight." "Did he say why?" "Not directly, but he mentioned problems at home. I asked if everything was okay with Vanessa, and he got this look on his face, scared, Mrs. Hayes." Marcus looked scared. David's voice dropped. "About 3 weeks ago he said something I can't stop thinking about." "What did he say?" "He said, 'I made a mistake, David, a big one, and I'm trying to figure out how to fix it.'" The words hit me like a punch. "He was talking about Vanessa." David nodded slowly. "I think so, but when I pushed for details he shut down. Said he'd tell me everything once he sorted it out. He never got the chance." We sat in silence for a moment, the implications hanging heavy between us. "David, Vanessa is planning this huge funeral, St. Catherine's Cathedral. Marcus would have hated it." "I know," David said bitterly. "She called me yesterday, asking about Haven Tech's valuation, the company's liquid assets, Marcus's stock holdings. At his funeral planning meeting, she wanted to know about our bank accounts and investment portfolio." He looked at me sharply. She wasn't asking as a grieving widow. She was asking as someone taking inventory. The funeral was a spectacle. St. Catherine's Cathedral stood in the heart of downtown Chicago, all Gothic spires and stained glass. It could hold 500 people easily. Marcus had always joked that he wanted to be cremated and his ashes scattered in the garden where he'd planted my roses. Simple, meaningful, private. This was a production. Over 300 people filled the pews. Business associates, Haven Tech employees, clients, vendors, friends, family, and photographers. So many photographers. Why were there cameras at my son's funeral? I sat in the front pew with Helen, wearing the simple black dress I'd bought at Target because I couldn't bear to think about shopping. Around me, Everyone else looked like they'd dressed for a gala. Then Vanessa made her entrance. She wore a black Chanel dress. I recognized it from the fashion magazines in the hair salon, with a delicate veil and diamond jewelry that caught the light from the cathedral's chandeliers. Where had she gotten money for diamonds? Marcus had been careful about joint accounts. She walked down the aisle slowly, her hand trembling as she touched pew after pew, accepting whispered condolences. Her shoulders shook with sobs. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. It was a perfect performance. But I watched her eyes. Behind that veil, they weren't sad. They were scanning, calculating, taking measure of the room and everyone in it. The service began. I was supposed to speak first, that's what the program said. But before I could stand, Vanessa rose from her seat and walked to the podium. "Forgive me," she said, her French accent thick with emotion. "I know Margaret was going to speak, but I need to say something first. I need you all to know who Marcus was to me." She gripped the podium, her knuckles white. "Marcus was the love of my life. When we met 14 months ago, I just knew that I'd found my soulmate. We had so many plans, so many dreams. We were going to have children, grow old together, build an empire together." Her voice broke convincingly. "We talked about our future every single day. He wanted 3 children, a house in Lake Forest, summers in Europe. We had this deep spiritual connection that transcended everything." I sat there, rage building in my chest like a fire. 14 months. She'd known Marcus for 14 months total. She had no right to talk about soulmates and spiritual connections and their future together. I'd raised him. I'd sacrificed everything for him. I'd watched him take his first steps, held him through nightmares, celebrated every achievement. I'd been there for 41 years. She'd been there for 14 months. When Vanessa finally stepped down, collapsing dramatically into her seat, I walked to the podium on shaking legs. "Marcus was 3 years old," I began, my voice steady despite the grief crushing my chest, "when his father left us. It was just the 2 of us against the world. I worked 3 jobs, night janitor, daytime waitress, weekend retail, so he could have the opportunities I never did. I told them about Marcus's childhood, about his determination and kindness, about how he never complained when other kids had new clothes and he wore hand-me-downs, about his first business plan, drafted on notebook paper at our kitchen table when he was 16. When Marcus bought me my first house 5 years ago," I said, my voice catching, "he gave me the keys and said, 'Mom, you gave me everything. Now it's my turn.' That was Marcus. He never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the people who loved him." Several Haven Tech employees approached me after, sharing stories of Marcus's generosity and leadership. One young programmer told me Marcus had paid for his mother's cancer treatment. A receptionist said Marcus had given her a loan to go back to school. These were the things Vanessa would never know about my son. Then Patricia Chen, Haven Tech's CFO, pulled me aside near the refreshment table. "Mrs. Hayes," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard, "there's something you should know about recent company finances." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "Vanessa has been calling the office, asking about accessing Marcus's business accounts. She wanted passwords, account numbers, everything. Marcus shut her out about 3 weeks ago, changed all the passwords, restricted her access to company information." "Why would he do that?" Patricia's expression was troubled. "I don't know. But he was scared, Mrs. Hayes. Really scared. He scheduled an emergency meeting with our corporate attorney for June 10th. He told me it was urgent, that he needed to protect the company from a threat. He wouldn't say more than that." June 10th. Marcus died June 3rd. He never made it to that meeting. "Patricia, do you think—" "I think Marcus knew something was wrong," Patricia said carefully. "And I think he was trying to protect himself. And you." At the graveside service, as they lowered Marcus's casket into the ground, Vanessa threw herself forward with a theatrical wail. "No, I can't let him go." She draped herself across the casket, sobbing. "Marcus, please, come back to me." 2 ushers had to help her back to her chair. She collapsed into it, covering her face with her hands, her whole body shaking. Helen leaned close to me and whispered, "That's not grief, Maggie. That's a performance." I watched Vanessa through my own tears, the expensive dress, the diamond jewelry, the calculated timing of every sob and tremor, the questions about money and assets even before Marcus was in the ground, the 14 months versus my 41 years, the pre-prepared documents at the hospital, Marcus's fear in his final weeks, Patricia's revelation about the passwords and the cancelled attorney meeting. All of it crystallized into one terrible, certain knowledge. "She killed him," I said quietly, the words feeling like truth the moment they left my lips. "I don't know how I know, but she killed my son." Helen's hand gripped mine. "Then we prove it!" The call came at 8:17 a.m. on June 7th, the morning after the funeral. "Margaret, this is Robert Chen. I need you to come to my office immediately. It's about Marcus's will." Robert Chen had been Marcus's personal attorney since 2013, when Haven Tech was just getting started. He'd helped with the incorporation papers, the first investment contracts, everything. Marcus trusted him completely. "Can't this wait?" I asked, exhausted. "I buried my son yesterday." "I wish it could." Robert's voice was somber. "But there are things you need to know right now, before Vanessa files any legal claims. Margaret, please. This is urgent." An hour later, I sat in a leather chair in the conference room of Chen and Associates law firm on the 42nd floor of a downtown Chicago high-rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Lake Michigan I couldn't appreciate. Documents were spread across the polished conference table. Robert had aged in the 3 weeks since I'd last seen him at a company function. His usually neat hair was disheveled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Coffee?" he offered. I tried to hold the cup, but my hands shook too badly. Robert took it from me gently and set it aside. "Margaret, I've been Marcus's attorney for 11 years. He trusted me with everything: his business, his finances, his future plans." Robert pulled a thick file folder toward him. "On May 13th, 2024, Marcus came to me very concerned and very frightened. He wanted to update his will immediately." My heart started pounding. 3 weeks before he died. "Yes." Robert opened the folder. "His previous will, drafted in 2021, split everything between you and any future spouse. Standard estate planning for a successful single man." He slid a document across the table. "This is the new will, signed and notarized on May 13th. Margaret, you are now the sole beneficiary of Marcus's entire estate. Everything. Haven Tech, the properties, investments, liquid assets, all of it comes to you." I stared at the paper, not quite understanding. "But Vanessa is his wife. Doesn't Illinois law—" "There's an explicit clause." Robert pointed to a paragraph. "Vanessa is to receive only what she legally brought into the marriage," which, according to the documentation Marcus provided me, was nothing. No assets, no property, no money. She came into the marriage with zero, and that's exactly what she's entitled to claim. He cut her out completely. Completely. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time since Marcus died. "So she can't touch his money?" "Not legally, no. But Margaret, you need to understand why Marcus did this." Robert's expression grew darker. He came to me terrified. He discovered irregularities in their joint bank accounts. $50,000 had been transferred without his authorization. Documents from their home safe had been photographed, he knew, because he'd set up a hidden camera. His credit cards showed purchases he'd never made. Vanessa was stealing from him. It gets worse. Marcus found evidence that Vanessa had been searching his office, accessing his computer files, even trying to add her name to Haven Tech accounts without his knowledge. Robert leaned forward. "Margaret, your son knew something was very wrong with his wife. And he was trying to protect himself and you." The room felt like it was closing in. "What else?" "Marcus hired a private investigator, a woman named Sarah Mitchell. He paid her $15,000 for a comprehensive background check on Vanessa." "What did she find?" "I asked her to come here today to tell you herself." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. A woman in her late 40s entered, professional, composed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore a navy suit and carried a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Sarah is a former FBI agent," Robert explained. 20 years of experience. Marcus came to her in late April because he needed to know the truth about his wife. Sarah sat down and placed a manila folder on the table. The label read, Vanessa Laurent Hayes Investigation, Confidential. Mrs. Hayes, Sarah said carefully, what I'm about to show you is disturbing. Your son was in serious danger, and I believe he knew it. She opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a birth certificate. Vanessa Laurent Hayes is not her real name. She was born Vanessa Marie Kowalski in Detroit, Michigan, in 1990. Laurent is her mother's maiden name. She started using it in 2015. Why would she change her name? To hide her history. Sarah pulled out more documents. There's no record of French citizenship, no evidence she ever lived in Europe. The consulting business she claimed to run doesn't exist. Her resume, her background, her entire identity, all fabricated. My head was spinning. Who is she really? Sarah's expression was grim. She pulled out a series of photographs, laying them side by side on the table. Vanessa has been married 4 times before Marcus. Each marriage lasted under 2 years. Each husband was a wealthy man over the age of 45, and every single one of them is dead. The photographs showed wedding pictures. Vanessa sometimes blonde, sometimes brunette, but always that same calculating look in her eyes, standing next to different men. Under each photo, Sarah had written details. Husband number 1, Thomas Richardson, real estate developer from Phoenix. They married in 2012. 11 months later, Thomas drowned in his backyard pool, accidental death. Vanessa inherited $2.1 million. I couldn't breathe. Husband number 2, James Wu, tech entrepreneur, San Francisco. Married in 2014. 9 months later, James died of sudden heart complications. Vanessa received a $3.8 million settlement. No, I whispered. Husband number 3, Dr. Robert Sullivan, a prominent surgeon in Boston. They married in 2017. 14 months later, he disappeared without a trace. His body was never found, but he was declared legally dead after 7 years. Vanessa inherited $1.9 million. Sarah placed another photo down. Husband number 4, Christopher Blackwood, investment banker in Manhattan. They married in 2020. 18 months later, he jumped from his 15th floor apartment balcony. Suicide, the police said. Vanessa collected $5.4 million in life insurance. The room was spinning. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling out of my chair. 4 men, Sarah continued relentlessly. All wealthy, all over 45, all married to Vanessa for less than 2 years, all dead within 18 months of marriage. All deaths ruled accidental, natural causes, or suicide. Do you understand what I'm telling you, Mrs. Hayes? She's done this before. The words came out as a horrified whisper. 4 times before, she's murdered 4 men. Marcus would have been number 5. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. He received my preliminary report on May 10th. 3 days later, he went to Robert and changed his will. Your son knew what Vanessa was, Mrs. Hayes, and he was trying to get away from her. But he didn't. Tears streamed down my face. He didn't get away in time. Robert placed a hand on my shoulder. Margaret, there's more. More? I couldn't imagine what could possibly be worse. Sarah pulled out another document. This came in this morning, the Cook County Medical Examiner's preliminary autopsy report. She slid it across the table. One section was highlighted in yellow. Unusual toxicology findings. Further investigation recommended. I stared at the words, not understanding. What does that mean? Sarah looked me directly in the eyes. Your son didn't have a heart attack, Mrs. Hayes. He was poisoned. Poisoned? The word came out strangled. How? Robert's desk phone buzzed. He pressed a button. Dr. Foster is ready on video conference. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life, revealing a woman in her 50s wearing a white coat, sitting in what looked like a medical examiner's office. Mrs. Hayes, she said, her voice professional but kind. I'm Dr. Amanda Foster, Cook County Medical Examiner. I performed your son's autopsy. I'm very sorry for your loss. Tell me what killed him. Dr. Foster pulled up an image on her screen, a toxicology report, covered in numbers and medical terms I didn't understand. We found traces of digoxin in Marcus's system. Digoxin is a cardiac medication derived from the foxglove plant. It's used to treat heart conditions. Marcus didn't have a heart condition. Exactly, and he had no prescription for digoxin. The levels we found are consistent with poisoning administered over a 2 to 3 week period. Dr. Foster highlighted sections of the report. Small doses wouldn't show immediate symptoms. The victim might experience fatigue, dizziness, nausea symptoms easily dismissed as stress or a virus. But the drug accumulates in the body until it reaches a fatal level. And then? Cardiac arrest that appears completely natural. The heart simply stops. Without specific toxicology testing, it looks exactly like a massive heart attack. Dr. Foster's expression was grim. If you hadn't pushed for a thorough autopsy, Mrs. Hayes, we might never have caught it. I thought of Marcus in those final weeks, David saying he'd lost weight, looked tired, seemed distracted, Patricia mentioning he'd seemed scared, he'd been dying slowly, and none of us knew. Digoxin poisoning is particularly insidious, Sarah Mitchell added, pulling out more documents from her investigation file. It's difficult to detect, mimics natural causes, and the symptoms are subtle enough that victims often don't realize they're being poisoned until it's too late. You said Vanessa did this to 4 other men, I said, my voice shaking. Were they all? We don't know for certain, the bodies were never properly tested. But based on the death reports I obtained, at least 3 of them showed symptoms consistent with digoxin poisoning before they died. Heart complications, sudden cardiac arrest, drowning after fainting spell. Sarah laid out photos of the previous victims. Vanessa has refined her method over 12 years. She targets men with high-stress careers, tech entrepreneurs, doctors, bankers. When they collapse from a heart attack, no one questions it. How does she choose them? I needed to understand how my son had become prey. Sarah pulled out a timeline. Vanessa hunts at charity events, upscale venues, professional networking functions. She researches her targets carefully: financial status, marital history, personality type. She prefers men aged 40 to 55 who are recently widowed or divorced, men who are lonely and vulnerable. Marcus was divorced in 2020, I whispered. He'd been single for 3 years. And she knew it. Sarah pulled up printouts of social media pages, event attendance records, professional profiles. Vanessa Laurent or Kowalski attended the Tech Innovation Gala in Chicago on March 18, 2023. Marcus was there as a keynote speaker. She accidentally spilled champagne on him. The memory hit me like a punch. Marcus had come to Sunday dinner that week, laughing about meeting someone. Mom, the craziest thing happened. This beautiful woman literally spilled champagne all over my suit. She was so apologetic, insisted on paying for the dry cleaning. We ended up talking for 2 hours. It hadn't been an accident. It had been a calculated strike. She claimed to be a freelance consultant in luxury brand marketing, Sarah continued. Her knowledge of the field was impressive because she'd researched it thoroughly. She asked Marcus about Haven Tech, about cybersecurity, about his vision for the company. All the conversations that felt organic and meaningful, she'd scripted them based on his public interviews and social media posts. Sarah laid out the timeline month by month. March 2023, first meeting. April through September. Intensive dating, with Vanessa playing the perfect partner, intellectual, charming, supportive. September. Vanessa pushing for marriage, using emotional manipulation. We're not getting younger, she told Marcus. When you know, why wait? October 2023, the quick wedding I'd had such bad feelings about. Then came the honeymoon period, Sarah said. October through December, Vanessa was the perfect wife. Gaining his trust, learning his routines, getting added to bank accounts in January 2024. By February, she had access to enough financial information to know exactly how much Marcus was worth. That's when the poisoning likely began. February? My voice cracked. She was killing him for 4 months? Slowly and carefully. But Marcus was smart. In April, he noticed $50,000 missing from a joint account. He installed hidden cameras in their home. Sarah pulled out a USB drive. Marcus gave me access to his encrypted cloud storage. Mrs. Hayes, I need to warn you, this footage is disturbing. She plugged the drive into Robert's laptop, and we watched security footage from Marcus's home kitchen. The timestamp read April 22, 2024, 6:47 a.m. Vanessa entered the frame wearing a silk robe, her hair perfect even at dawn. She opened the refrigerator, pulled out Marcus's coffee creamer, and set it on the counter. Then she reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a small pill bottle. My hands clenched into fists. Vanessa crushed a tablet with the back of a spoon, scraped the white powder into the creamer, and stirred carefully. Then she put everything away and left the kitchen. 5 minutes later, Marcus entered, made his coffee, and drank it while checking his phone. There are 7 recordings like this, Sarah said quietly. April 22nd, April 29th, May 6th, May 13th, May 20th, May 27th, and June 2nd, the day before he died. I couldn't speak. I'd watched my son's murderer poison him in his own kitchen. Marcus knew. I finally choked out. He recorded her doing it. He was gathering evidence to go to the police, but he ran out of time. Sarah pulled out more documents, interviews she'd conducted with the families of Vanessa's previous victims. Christine Richardson, Thomas's sister from Phoenix, told me, "We always knew something was wrong." Tom was terrified of her at the end, but too embarrassed to admit he'd made a mistake. He died 2 weeks after telling me he wanted a divorce. May Wu, James's mother from San Francisco, my son tried to divorce her 2 weeks before he died. She told him she'd destroy his reputation if he left. He was found dead the next morning. Emily Sullivan, Dr. Sullivan's daughter from Boston. Dad called me the night before he vanished. He said, "If anything happens to me, look at Vanessa." They never found his body. 4 families, 4 dead men, 4 fortunes stolen, and Marcus would have been the 5th. "This is beyond a civil inheritance dispute," Robert said. "This is a criminal matter. I've already contacted Detective Lisa Morrison at Chicago PD Homicide Division. The medical examiner's report triggered an automatic investigation," Sarah added. "But my evidence, the pattern, the previous victims, the video footage, this gives the police everything they need to build a murder case. The problem is, we need to act fast." "Why?" I asked. "Because according to the travel records I pulled, Vanessa booked a one-way flight to Paris for tomorrow morning, June 8th, at 9:15 a.m. She's planning to run." The rage that had been building in my chest since the hospital exploded into white-hot fury. "She thinks she's going to take Marcus's money and disappear." "Not if we stop her tonight," Sarah said. Robert pulled out a sealed envelope from his safe. "Margaret, Marcus left this for you. It's dated May 20th, 2 weeks before he died. He asked me to give it to you only if something happened to him." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. The handwriting on the front was Marcus's, "To be opened only by Margaret Hayes in event of my death." I tore it open, and my son's words blurred through my tears as I read. Asterisk. Dear Mom. Asterisk. Asterisk. If you're reading this, then I didn't make it out alive, and my fears were justified. I'm so sorry, Mom. You were right about Vanessa, and I was too proud and stupid to listen. Asterisk. Asterisk, I found out the truth about her 3 weeks ago. She's not French, she's not a marketing consultant, and I'm not her first husband. She's a murderer who's done this before. Sarah Mitchell has all the evidence. Asterisk. Asterisk. I've been planning to leave her, but I'm scared. She watches me constantly. I changed my will to protect you, but I'm worried she'll act before I can safely get away. I've been feeling sick for weeks, dizzy, chest pains, fatigue. I think she's poisoning me. Asterisk. Asterisk, Mom. Please don't let her get away with this. Use everything I built to stop her from hurting anyone else. She's a monster who preys on lonely men and destroys families. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm sorry I didn't listen when you said something felt wrong about her. I'm sorry for every worry I caused you. Thank you for every sacrifice you made for me. Everything I am, everything I accomplished, was because you never gave up on me. Asterisk. Asterisk. If the worst happens, know that I love you more than anything. You're the strongest person I know. Make sure she pays for what she's done. Asterisk. Asterisk. Your son forever. Asterisk. Asterisk. Marcus. Asterisk. The letter fell from my hands. Tears streamed down my face, but underneath the grief, something else was building. Something fierce and protective and absolutely unbreakable. The mother bear who had worked 3 jobs to feed her son, who had sacrificed everything so he could have a future, who had fought her whole life to keep him safe. That mother bear was awake now, and she was done mourning. She will not get away with killing my son, I said, my voice steady and cold. There was a knock at the door. A woman in a detective's shield entered, late 30s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. Mrs. Hayes, I'm Detective Lisa Morrison, Chicago PD Homicide Division. Based on the medical examiner's report and the evidence Miss Mitchell has provided, we're opening a murder investigation into your son's death. She set her badge on the table. But we have a problem. Vanessa Laurent Hayes booked a flight to Paris for tomorrow morning at 9:15. Once she's out of the country, extradition could take years. We need to move fast. I stood up, still holding Marcus's letter. Then we stop her. Tonight. Detective Morrison spread crime scene photos and legal documents across Robert's conference table. It was 5:47 p.m. We had less than 16 hours before Vanessa's flight left. This is Assistant District Attorney Kevin Brooks, Morrison said, gesturing to a man in his 40s who'd just arrived. He'll be prosecuting this case. Brooks shook my hand, his expression grim. Mrs. Hayes, I need to be honest with you. The evidence is strong, but it's circumstantial. The video shows Vanessa adding something to the coffee, but we'd need to prove it was digoxin. The pattern of previous deaths is compelling, but we'd need those cases reopened. A good defense attorney could drag this out for years. What are you saying? We need more. We need Vanessa to incriminate herself. We need a confession. Detective Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Hayes, Illinois is a one-party consent state. That means you can legally record a conversation without the other person's knowledge. If you were to meet with Vanessa, wearing a wire, and get her talking about Marcus's death and the money, you want me to be bait? I know it's asking a lot. I'll do it. The words came without hesitation. Whatever it takes, I want justice for my son. Morrison's expression softened with respect. All right. Here's how this works. You'll wear a concealed microphone. Your job is to keep Vanessa talking about the money, about Marcus, about her plans. Let her think she's in control. If she feels threatened, use the code phrase, I need some air, and we'll move in immediately. When do we do this? Tonight. Now. Before she realizes we're on to her. Sarah handed me a cell phone. Call her. Tell her you want to discuss the estate settlement. Appeal to her greed. My hands were steady as I dialed Vanessa's number. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice cautious. Margaret? We need to talk about Marcus's estate. Can you come to my house? A pause. Why? So you can scream at me again? No. So we can settle this like adults. I've spoken with attorneys. I know what I'm facing if I fight you. Maybe we can work something out. I could hear the calculation in her silence. Greed warring with suspicion. Finally, greed won. Fine. 8:30. But Margaret, if you're wasting my time... I'm not. I just want this over with. After I hung up, Morrison fitted me with a wire, a tiny microphone clipped under my blouse, nearly invisible. Sarah went over the strategy. Stay calm. Let Vanessa feel superior. Bait her with talk of money. Appeal to her ego, Sarah instructed. She's arrogant. She thinks she's smarter than everyone. Use that. At 8:15 p.m., I was back at my Oak Park home, the house Marcus had bought me. Photos of him covered every surface, childhood pictures, graduation photos, the grand opening of Haven Tech. I touched his Little League baseball trophy on the mantel. I'm doing this for you, baby, I whispered. Police and Sarah were positioned in an unmarked van 2 houses down. Detective Morrison's voice came through the small earpiece they'd given me. We're in position, Mrs. Hayes. You're doing great. Just keep her talking. At 8:35 p.m., a black Mercedes SUV pulled into my driveway. Vanessa stepped out, and I noticed immediately how different she looked. No designer clothes tonight, just jeans and a dark sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She carried a large leather purse. She looked relaxed, confident. The mask was off because she thought she'd already won. I opened the door before she could knock. "Come in." Vanessa walked into my living room, her eyes scanning the space, cataloging, assessing, looking at Marcus's childhood home the way a thief looks at a jewelry store. "Would you like some tea?" I offered, the irony not lost on me. "No, let's just handle business, Margaret. Where are the estate documents?" I sat down on the couch, gesturing for her to take the chair across from me. I wanted to talk about Marcus first, about what really happened. Her eyes narrowed. It was very sudden. Heart attack. These things happen. Marcus was 41 years old, healthy, athletic, no family history of heart disease. "Are you suggesting something, Margaret?" Her voice turned sharp. "Because I don't appreciate. I'm saying my son was too young to die of natural causes." Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she forced a sad smile. "Grief is making you paranoid. Marcus had a heart attack. It's tragic, but it's not suspicious. Gerald said you're entitled to everything. The 29 million, the company, the properties." Her eyes lit up at the mention of money. "That's correct. Illinois law is very clear about spousal inheritance rights." "What if I don't fight you?" I said carefully. "What if we settle this quietly?" Vanessa sat back, surprised. "You just give it to me?" I let my shoulders slump, playing the exhausted old woman. "I'm 66 years old. I don't need $29 million. Fighting you in court would take years. The lawyer's fees alone would be astronomical, and the stress." I shook my head. "I'm tired, Vanessa. I just want peace." She leaned forward, interested now. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Maybe we could arrange something. You take most of it, 25 million. Leave me 4 million, enough to live on comfortably. We both signed documents saying there was no foul play, no suspicious circumstances. You get what you want. I get to mourn my son in peace." Vanessa's eyes gleamed with greed. "That's surprisingly reasonable. But I need something from you first." "What?" "The truth." I met her eyes. "About why you really married my son, and what happened on June 3rd. The room fell silent. Vanessa studied me for a long moment, weighing her options. I could see her mind working, calculating. She thought she'd won. She thought I was just a grieving old woman ready to give up. Finally, a cold smile spread across her face. "You already know, don't you? You figured it out." I stayed silent, letting her fill the space. "Marcus was a job," she said simply. "A very profitable job, just like the others." My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. "Others? He made it so easy. They all do." Vanessa's voice was matter-of-fact, almost bored. "Lonely, successful men, so eager for companionship. You target them at the right venues, create the perfect persona, become exactly what they need. It's not difficult. And then? Quick marriage, that's crucial. Under 6 months, before they have time to think too clearly. Then you gain access bank accounts, financial records, investments. Learn exactly what they're worth." She pulled documents from her purse. The heart medication in his coffee worked beautifully. Slow, undetectable, looks like completely natural causes. I was gripping the couch cushion so hard my knuckles were white, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "How many others?" Vanessa shrugged. "Marcus was number 5. Each one funded the next hunt. It's quite sustainable, actually. I've made over 13 million in the last 12 years. Your son's 29 million would have set me up beautifully for retirement." She pulled out settlement papers, sliding them across the coffee table toward me. "Here's the paperwork. You sign, acknowledge that Marcus died of natural causes, agree to the settlement, and we never speak again." Then she pulled something else from her purse, a small glass vial filled with white powder. "What's that?" I asked, my blood running cold. Vanessa's smile turned predatory. "Insurance. Same thing Marcus took, just in case you change your mind about our deal after signing. Can't be too careful." That was it. She'd confessed to everything and threatened to poison me. I stood up, my voice steady and cold. I'm not signing anything, and you're not leaving this house. Vanessa's face changed, realization dawning. What did you do? I pulled out my phone, showing her the recording app that had been running the entire time. I recorded every word, and the police are right outside. Her face went white, then red with fury. She lunged toward the door, but it burst open before she could reach it. Vanessa Kowalski, you're under arrest for the murder of Marcus Hayes. Detective Morrison and 4 uniformed officers swarmed in, weapons drawn. Vanessa screamed, thrashing as they pulled her arms behind her back. This is entrapment. That recording is illegal. You can't. Illinois is a one-party consent state, Morrison said calmly, snapping handcuffs onto Vanessa's wrists. Mrs. Hayes had every legal right to record your conversation. You're also under arrest for attempted murder of Margaret Hayes, based on the poison you brought into her home. We'll be opening investigations into 4 additional murders in 4 states. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Vanessa's careful mask shattered completely. The French accent disappeared, replaced by a harsh Detroit snarl. You stupid old woman, she spat at me. That money should be mine. I earned it. I spent 14 months playing the devoted wife to your pathetic son. Marcus was nothing, Vanessa screamed as they dragged her toward the door. Just another stupid man who thought with his heart instead of his head. He deserved what he got. I walked closer, looking her straight in the eyes. My son was worth more than you could ever understand. He was kind, brilliant, generous, everything you'll never be. And you'll spend the rest of your life in prison thinking about the $29 million you'll never have. Vanessa lunged at me, but the officers held her back. She was still screaming threats as they dragged her out to the waiting patrol car. Detective Morrison put a hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Hayes, you did brilliantly. This recording will convict her. You just got justice for your son. After the police cars pulled away, their red and blue lights fading into the darkness, I collapsed onto the couch. The adrenaline that had kept me standing drained away all at once, leaving me shaking and exhausted. Helen arrived 10 minutes later. Sarah must have called her. She wrapped me in her arms while I cried. It's over, Maggie. You got her. I picked up the framed photo of Marcus from the coffee table, his Harvard graduation picture, that huge smile, his whole future ahead of him. I got her. Baby, I whispered to the photo. She'll never hurt anyone else's son. But even as Helen held me and I clutched Marcus's picture, I knew the truth. The legal battle was just beginning. On June 9th, 2 days after Vanessa's arrest, my world exploded into media chaos. The headline on every news station read the same. Black Widow of Chicago, tech CEO poisoned by wife. CNN ran a special report. The Tribune devoted their entire front page to the story. A serial killer who had preyed on successful men for 12 years, accumulating over $40 million through murder. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, producers, talk show hosts. They camped outside my house with cameras and microphones. Helen had to escort me to my car through a gauntlet of shouted questions. Mrs. Hayes, how did you know your daughter-in-law was a killer? Did you suspect Vanessa from the beginning? What was it like recording her confession? I said nothing. Detective Morrison had been clear. No interviews, no statements until after the trial. Every word I said publicly could be used by Vanessa's defense. So I stayed in seclusion at Helen's house, watching the news coverage with a mixture of vindication and horror. The investigation expanded rapidly. Detective Morrison was leading a multi-state task force, coordinating with law enforcement in Arizona, California, Massachusetts, and New York. 4 previous cases were being reopened. 4 families finally getting the justice they'd been denied. On June 12th, Vanessa's bail hearing made national news. She'd hired Malcolm Bradshaw, a notorious defense attorney who specialized in getting wealthy criminals acquitted. He was expensive, cunning, and had a reputation for destroying prosecution witnesses on the stand. Bradshaw argued that Vanessa was innocent, persecuted by a bitter mother-in-law who'd never accepted her. He claimed the arrest was based on circumstantial evidence and an illegally obtained confession. Assistant District Attorney Kevin Brooks countered with facts. The Paris ticket showing flight risk, the $13 million in hidden offshore accounts they'd discovered, the video evidence of poisoning, the pattern of 4 previous dead husbands. Judge Patricia Hamilton denied bail without hesitation. Mrs. Kowalski represents a clear danger to society and an extreme flight risk. She will remain in Cook County Jail pending trial. I watched Vanessa's face on the courtroom camera as the judge spoke. For just a moment, her mask slipped, revealing pure rage before her lawyer touched her arm and she composed herself again. The exhumations began. On June 18th, Thomas Richardson's body was removed from his grave in Phoenix. The new autopsy revealed what his sister Christine had suspected for 11 years. Massive levels of digoxin in his system, identical to what had killed Marcus. "I always knew she murdered him," Christine told reporters outside the Phoenix medical examiner's office, tears streaming down her face. The police said it was an accidental drowning, but Tom was terrified of Vanessa. He told me 2 months before he died that he'd made a terrible mistake marrying her. James Wu's exhumation in San Francisco on June 22nd produced similar results. High levels of digoxin were found in his hair samples, proving sustained poisoning over weeks. His mother, May Wu, provided investigators with emails James had sent days before his death. "Mom, I need a lawyer. Vanessa is threatening to destroy my business reputation if I leave her. I'm scared." The original medical examiner in San Francisco admitted his investigation had been cursory. Heart complications had been the easy explanation for a high-stress tech entrepreneur's sudden death. No one had looked deeper. Now they were looking. On July 3rd, Sarah Mitchell arranged a meeting at Robert Chen's law office. 7 family members representing Vanessa's 4 previous victims gathered around the conference table, united by grief and rage. Christine Richardson spoke first. She was 58, a high school teacher from Phoenix, with her brother Thomas's kind eyes. "Tom met Vanessa at a charity auction in 2012, Christine said, her voice steady but pained. "She bid on him in a bachelor auction, made it seem romantic and spontaneous. They were married within 5 months. Vanessa pushed hard for a quick wedding. 2 months before he died, Tom called me crying. He said, 'Chris, I married a monster and I don't know how to escape.' He was found dead in his backyard pool 3 weeks later. The police called it an accidental drowning, said he must have slipped and hit his head. But Tom was an excellent swimmer. He'd been on the swim team in college. I tried to tell the police something was wrong. They dismissed me as a grieving sister looking for someone to blame. Vanessa inherited $2.1 million and disappeared within weeks. I never saw her again until her face appeared on the news last month." May Wu, a 70-year-old woman who looked far older from grief, spoke next about her son James. "My boy met Vanessa at a tech conference in San Francisco in 2014. She was charming, intelligent. They married after 9 months of dating. James changed after the wedding became withdrawn, paranoid, unwell. He lost weight, couldn't sleep. 2 weeks before he died, he called me at 2 in the morning. 'Mom, I need a lawyer. Vanessa is threatening to destroy my reputation if I leave. She says she'll tell my investors I'm unstable, that I'm embezzling funds. I don't know what to do.' May's voice broke. 'I told him to come home, that we'd figure it out together. He was found dead the next morning. Heart complications,' they said. Vanessa provided medical records showing James had a pre-existing heart condition. Those records were later proven to be forged, but by then she'd already collected $3.8 million and disappeared. Emily Sullivan, 41 years old, told the story of her father, Dr. Robert Sullivan. Dad was a respected surgeon in Boston. He met Vanessa at a medical conference in 2017. I warned him something felt wrong about her, but he was lonely after Mom died. They'd been married 14 months when Dad disappeared in October 2018. The night before, he called me. His voice was shaking. He said, 'Emmy, if anything happens to me, look at Vanessa. I found things, documents, emails. She's not who she claims to be. If I disappear, it's her.' I thought he was being paranoid. The next day, he was gone." Emily wiped tears from her eyes. They never found his body. After 7 years, he was declared legally dead. Vanessa inherited $1.9 million, his share of the medical practice, and 2 investment properties. "I've spent years wondering where my father is buried." On July 8th, Emily got her answer. An anonymous tip led Boston police to a construction site in Southie. Buried under what was now a commercial building, they found skeletal remains wrapped in plastic. DNA testing confirmed it was Dr. Robert Sullivan. Forensic evidence showed a skull fracture. He'd been murdered, not missing. The news hit me hard. Marcus could have ended up the same way if I hadn't pushed for a thorough autopsy. Jennifer Blackwood was the youngest of the group, only 28 years old when she lost her father, Christopher, to Vanessa's scheme. Dad met Vanessa at a charity gala in Manhattan in 2020, Jennifer said. He was an investment banker, recently divorced from my mother. Vanessa pursued him aggressively. They were married within a year. Dad became depressed after the wedding. Not himself. I visited him at his apartment a week before he died, and he seemed terrified. He kept checking the door, jumping at sounds. I asked if he was okay, and he said, "I made a mistake, Jenny, a bad one." He wouldn't say more. 3 days later, he fell from his 15th floor apartment balcony. The police ruled it suicide, but my father was terrified of heights. He wouldn't even stand near the railing. "There's no way he jumped." Vanessa pushed him. Jennifer's hands clenched into fists. The security footage from that night was mysteriously corrupted. Vanessa collected $5.4 million in life insurance and was gone within a month. "I've been fighting for 3 years to get someone to listen to me. Finally, someone has." Sarah Mitchell presented her comprehensive analysis to the group. 4 men, aged 45 to 55, all wealthy, all marriages lasting 9 to 18 months. All deaths occurring within 2 weeks of the victims trying to leave or discovering the truth about Vanessa. All original investigations inadequate and rushed. Vanessa's total take: $13.2 million from 4 murders, with Marcus's $29 million as her intended 5th score. A $42 million killing spree spanning 12 years. Kevin Brooks, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. "We're going to prosecute Marcus's case first. We have the strongest evidence: video surveillance, audio confession, toxicology report, and the letter predicting his murder. The other cases will be prosecuted subsequently in their respective states. But we're using all 4 previous cases as pattern evidence. Vanessa's MO, her methods, her victim selection, it all establishes premeditation and intent. This wasn't a crime of passion or a single bad decision. This was a calculated, sustained criminal enterprise." Over the next month, I spent countless hours with prosecutors, reviewing evidence. Marcus's financial records showing Vanessa's spending patterns. His calendar revealing how she'd systematically isolated him from friends. The video footage from his hidden cameras, 7 separate recordings of her poisoning his coffee. The evidence list grew. Marcus's letter predicting his murder. The surveillance videos. My audio recording of Vanessa's confession. Toxicology reports from Marcus and the exhumed victims. Financial records showing her pattern of inheritance. Digital forensics revealing her internet searches for undetectable poisons and inheritance law by state. Malcolm Bradshaw fought hard to suppress evidence. He claimed entrapment, coercion, that the wire recording was illegal despite Illinois being a one-party consent state. He argued Marcus died of natural causes, claiming the toxicology was flawed. He tried to paint me as a bitter, jealous mother-in-law who'd fabricated evidence to steal the inheritance for myself. Pre-trial hearings ran from July 12th through 15th. Judge Hamilton, a stern woman in her 60s with zero tolerance for nonsense, denied every defense motion. The wire recording was admissible. The pattern evidence from previous cases could be presented. The surveillance videos were authentic and relevant. Trial was set for August 15th, 2024. The day before jury selection began, I visited Marcus's grave. Helen drove me to the cemetery, then gave me space to be alone with my son. I placed fresh roses on the headstone, the same type he'd planted in my garden. Sitting on the grass beside his grave, I traced his name with my fingers. "The trial starts tomorrow, baby," I whispered. "I'm going to make sure she never sees freedom again. She'll pay for what she did to you, and to Thomas, and James, and Robert, and Christopher. She'll pay for every life she destroyed." Helen appeared beside me, sitting down on the grass. "You've been so strong, Maggie. Marcus would be so proud of you." "I'm doing this for him," I said, looking at the headstone. And for every family she destroyed, every mother who lost a son, every daughter who lost a father. This ends now. Tomorrow, Vanessa would face justice. August 15, 2024. Cook County Criminal Courthouse. The media circus outside was even worse than I'd imagined. News vans lined the street, reporters with microphones crowded the courthouse steps, and protesters held signs reading, "Justice for the Black Widow's victims" and "Death penalty for serial killers." Helen and I pushed through with Robert Chen and Detective Morrison flanking us. Cameras flashed, questions were shouted. I kept my head down and said nothing. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Judge Patricia Hamilton presided, a woman with steel-gray hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for running a tight courtroom. The jury box sat empty, waiting for selection. The prosecution table held Kevin Brooks and his team. The defense table held Malcolm Bradshaw and his associates. And then Vanessa entered. She wore a conservative navy suit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and fake glasses that made her look studious and innocent. The transformation was remarkable, from the glamorous woman in designer clothes to this demure, sympathetic figure. It was another performance, another mask. But I saw her eyes when she scanned the courtroom. Cold, calculating, unrepentant. I sat in the front row with Helen. Behind us were Christine Richardson, May Wu, Emily Sullivan, and Jennifer Blackwood. The families of Vanessa's victims, united in our demand for justice. Jury selection took 3 days. Finding 12 impartial people who hadn't already formed opinions from the massive media coverage proved difficult. Finally, a jury was seated. 7 women, 5 men, diverse in age and background. Kevin Brooks worried quietly that Vanessa's attractive appearance might sway the jury. Malcolm Bradshaw's strategy was already clear. Portray her as a victim of circumstantial evidence and a vindictive mother-in-law. On August 18th, opening statements began. Kevin Brooks stood before the jury, his voice clear and powerful. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of a predator. For 12 years, Vanessa Kowalski hunted successful men. She researched them, seduced them, married them, and then murdered them for their money. She killed at least 5 men and accumulated over $40 million through cold, calculated murder." He laid out the timeline. Thomas Richardson in 2013, James Wu in 2015, Dr. Robert Sullivan in 2018, Christopher Blackwood in 2022, and Marcus Hayes in 2024. 5 men, 5 marriages under 2 years, 5 deaths, 5 fortunes stolen. We will prove that Vanessa Kowalski is a serial killer who showed no mercy to her victims and no remorse for her crimes. She poisoned Marcus Hayes slowly over weeks, watched him suffer, and then showed up at his deathbed with a lawyer and pre-prepared inheritance documents. The evidence is overwhelming, and at the end of this trial, we will ask you to find her guilty of first-degree murder. Malcolm Bradshaw's opening was smooth and sympathetic. "Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret Hayes never accepted her son's wife. From the moment Marcus married Vanessa, his mother tried to poison their relationship. When Marcus died tragically of a heart attack, a genuine medical emergency, Margaret couldn't accept it. So she fabricated this elaborate conspiracy theory, coerced a confession through illegal means, and now seeks to steal her son's fortune by destroying an innocent widow's life. The deaths of Vanessa's previous husbands are tragic coincidences. Vanessa is guilty only of having terrible luck in love. The prosecution's case is built on circumstantial evidence, speculation, and the bitter accusations of a mother who couldn't let go." I gripped Helen's hand, fury building in my chest. But Kevin had warned me this would happen. Bradshaw's only strategy was to attack me and create reasonable doubt. Week 1 focused on medical evidence. Dr. Amanda Foster took the stand and methodically explained Marcus's autopsy. She showed the jury charts and graphs illustrating digoxin poisoning, how it accumulates in the system, mimics heart attack symptoms, and proves fatal at high enough levels. Marcus Hayes had no heart condition, no prescription for digoxin. The levels in his system could only have come from deliberate, sustained poisoning beginning in mid-April and continuing until his death on June 3rd. Bradshaw tried to suggest natural causes during cross-examination, but Dr. Foster was unshakable. This was deliberate, sustained poisoning. There's no other medical explanation. Toxicology experts testified about the exhumed victims. Thomas Richardson's remains showed identical digoxin poisoning. James Wu's hair samples revealed sustained dosing over weeks. The scientific evidence was irrefutable. Week 2 brought pattern evidence. Sarah Mitchell spent 3 days on the stand, presenting her investigation into Vanessa's history. She showed the jury timeline after timeline. 5 marriages, 5 quick weddings, 5 deaths within 18 months, 5 substantial inheritances. She presented Vanessa's internet search history. Undetectable poisons. Wealthy widowers Chicago. Illinois inheritance law, spousal rights. Then came the victims' families. Christine Richardson testified with quiet fury about her brother Thomas's fear in his final weeks. He called me crying. Said, "Chris, I married a monster and I don't know how to escape." Mei Wu described James's terrified phone call days before his death. He said Vanessa was threatening to destroy him if he tried to leave. He was found dead the next morning. Emily Sullivan told the jury about her father's final words. Dad said, "If anything happens to me, look at Vanessa. They found his body buried in plastic last month. She murdered him and hid him like garbage." Jennifer Blackwood rejected the suicide ruling on her father. Christopher was terrified of heights. He would never jump. She pushed him. Several jurors were visibly emotional, wiping tears as the families spoke. Week 3 was when the prosecution's case became devastating. Patricia Chen testified about Marcus's final weeks, how he changed passwords, restricted Vanessa's access, seemed frightened. He told me, "I made the biggest mistake of my life." David Park described Marcus's personality change after marriage. He stopped socializing, lost weight, seemed controlled. In March, he said, "David, I'm in trouble. I found out things about Vanessa." 2 months later, he was dead. Then came the surveillance video. The courtroom fell silent as the screen showed Marcus's kitchen. The timestamp, April 18, 2024, 6:47 a.m. Vanessa entered, opened the refrigerator, pulled out Marcus's coffee creamer. Then she retrieved a pill bottle from her pocket, crushed a tablet, and stirred the white powder into the creamer. The video played 7 times, 7 dates, 7 recordings of Vanessa poisoning my son's morning coffee. A forensic expert testified that the white powder was crushed digoxin tablets. Vanessa's face was clearly visible in every frame. There was no way to deny it. On day 12, I took the stand. Kevin Brooks walked me through my testimony. Raising Marcus alone, his success, meeting Vanessa, the unease I'd felt from the start. The hospital confrontation when Vanessa arrived with her lawyer 1 hour after Marcus's death. The funeral where she performed grief while asking about money. The wire recording where she confessed to everything. Then they played the audio. Vanessa's voice filled the courtroom. Marcus was a job, a very profitable job. Just like the others, the heart medication in his coffee worked beautifully. Marcus was number 5. Each one funded the next hunt. I watched the jury's faces. Several shook their heads in disgust. 2 women were crying. Bradshaw tried to destroy me during cross-examination. "You never liked Mrs. Hayes Laurent, did you, Mrs. Hayes?" "I didn't trust her," I said calmly. "And I was right. You wanted your son's money for yourself." "I wanted my son alive," I said, meeting his eyes. "Money means nothing without him." The jury was clearly sympathetic. Then Kevin Brooks read Marcus's letter aloud, his final words predicting his own murder, warning me about Vanessa, begging me to stop her from hurting others. I cried silently as Marcus's voice seemed to fill the courtroom through those written words. Helen held my hand. The victims' families wept. Week 4 brought Vanessa to the stand. Against Bradshaw's advice, she insisted on testifying. She took the stand on September 5th, confident and composed, ready to play the wronged widow. "I loved Marcus," she said, dabbing her eyes. "His death devastated me. I came to the hospital to support Margaret, and she attacked me. I don't know why she hates me so much." But Kevin Brooks was methodical in his cross-examination, presenting contradiction after contradiction. "You claim French heritage. Where's your French passport?" It's complicated." "You said you loved Marcus. Why were you researching inheritance law 2 weeks before he died?" That's a misunderstanding. "You deny poisoning Marcus. How do you explain the 7 videos showing you adding white powder to his coffee? I don't. You deny confessing to Mrs. Hayes. How do you explain the audio recording? Vanessa's composure cracked. Her voice rose, became defensive. That recording was obtained illegally. It was completely legal under Illinois law. One more time, Mrs. Kowalski. Did you poison Marcus Hayes? No. Did you murder 4 other men? No, this is persecution. Under pressure, her mask shattered completely. She became angry, arrogant. Marcus was weak, she snapped, like all of them. She stopped, realizing what she'd said, but it was too late. The jury had seen the real Vanessa, cold, calculated, remorseless. Bradshaw called a recess, tried to salvage his case, but the damage was done. Closing arguments on September 7th were brief. Vanessa Kowalski is a serial killer who murdered at least 5 men for money, Kevin Brooks said. Marcus Hayes is dead because she poisoned him. The evidence is overwhelming. Find her guilty. Bradshaw's defense was weak, grasping at reasonable doubt that didn't exist. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. At 4:47 p.m. on September 8th, they returned. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. In the matter of the People versus Vanessa Kowalski, on the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Marcus Hayes, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Vanessa screamed, collapsing in her chair. This isn't over. I'll appeal. This is wrong. Additional guilty verdicts followed. Attempted murder of Margaret Hayes, fraud, forgery, identity theft. I let myself cry, finally. Finally, justice for Marcus. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by media and supporters, I gave my only statement. My son can rest in peace. This woman will never hurt another family. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for October 1st. One more battle ahead. October 1st, 2024. The courtroom was packed for Vanessa's sentencing hearing. She sat at the defense table in an orange Cook County Jail jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of her. No more designer clothes. No more perfectly styled hair. No more masks. Just a convicted murderer waiting to learn how long she'd spend in prison. Judge Hamilton looked out at the courtroom. Before I impose sentence, I'll hear victim impact statements. Christine Richardson approached the podium first, her hands trembling but her voice strong. Vanessa Kowalski stole my brother from us. Thomas was kind, generous, loved life. He coached Little League, volunteered at the animal shelter, made everyone around him smile. She murdered him for $2 million and never looked back. She didn't even attend his funeral, just collected the money and disappeared. Christine's voice broke. I hope she spends every single day in prison thinking about the lives she destroyed. My brother deserved to grow old. Because of her, he never got that chance. Mei Wu was next, a tiny woman who seemed to have aged decades since losing her only son. James was my only child, my miracle baby. I was